Okay, so I wrote this article, and it's titled Communism, Crime, and Mainstreaming Delusion, Watching the World Burn. And I just, every day I sit back and I watch things on the mainstream media and just the world in not only my country but many other countries become more insane and more insane every day, and it's really shocking. So what I wrote in this article is each day people in the US and around the world watch as the mainstream media regurgitates the same propaganda, lies, and continues to completely black out hand-picked real-world issues that do not meet the anti-white, anti-American, anti-traditional moral values, anti-Christian, anti-anything that represents rational thought process or truth based on factual data. How do I know? Oh, I missed a part. So, Black Lives Matter commercials are blasted across television screens all over the world aimed at children who do not even understand what the word racism means. How do I know? Because my own child is 8 years old and she happened to see one of these commercials. And she came to me asking questions. Um, she asked, do Black Lives matter more than mine? And what is racism? I don't allow my children to watch television very much as it is. I feel that even programs meant for children are targeting them with social justice and liberal ideals at an incredibly young age. Children are very innocent in the way that they choose friends and decide who they want to play with at school. And I'm speaking on this from what I see from my own children and the children surrounding them. From the eyes of a mother, I see children who love with the innocence of those who have not yet had their minds poisoned by outside sources with selfish agendas. They do not choose their friends based on skin color. They do not speak of skin color, and I've found that children do not seem to notice these differences until someone points it out or they begin to feel the results of what other children may be taught at home. For example, when a 5-year-old white girl with blonde hair and blue eyes was beaten to a pulp on a bus by a mob of black children, the news media did not report on this for days or weeks on end. It didn't matter that she suffered 2 black eyes and broken bones in her face, all caught on video while the bus driver did nothing to help her. 5 years old. Hi guys. This is not rare, but common occurrence among white children forced to live in majority black neighborhoods and attend majority black schools. Howard Stern once told the story of how he was one of these kids growing up with very liberal parents and living in an almost all black school where he says he was terrorized every day of his young life. He said his life was hell as a child because he was beaten, spit on, kicked, and bullied every day. Today, I sit back watching Black Lives Matter and Antifa destroy my country. Take over police stations and entire city blocks. Burn police stations and cities. I watch the mainstream media make excuses and flat out lie, not only to the American people, but to the world. Even when the data and numbers show who the perpetrator group of violent crime is, the media tells us the opposite. The mainstream media continues to say these are mostly peaceful protests. Really? The last time I checked, peaceful protest didn't end in entire cities being leveled and police officers being murdered. No, the Oregon ranchers peacefully protested. We've witnessed repeatedly what happens when white people peacefully protest. To name a few instances, the siege at Ruby Ridge, where Randy Weaver and his family lived on a remote mountain, and Randy Weaver was entrapped by the FBI concerning a shotgun. The FBI ended up on Randy Weaver's property at night doing surveillance on this one man. Their presence alerted Randy's dogs, and 2 men were found to be hiding in the bushes near his home in the middle of the night. How would you know the FBI was on your private property, hiding in your bushes at night on a remote mountaintop? When Randy and his 14-year-old son went to see what had alerted the dogs, it ended with his son being shot dead and a federal agent fatally wounded on the Weaver property. The siege at Ruby Ridge ended with Randy Weaver's wife having been shot dead while holding their newborn baby as she stood in the doorway of their cabin, and the loss of his 14-year-old son, both murdered at the hands of the FBI. One federal agent was dead, and after outrage of the community in a court battle, Weaver was only charged with the original shotgun that he was entrapped into selling to a federal agent. 2 federal agents were charged with murder for the deaths of Randy's wife and son. I didn't mention in this article that he also received a settlement from the federal government for the murder of his wife and son. Then we have the siege at Waco. Not to say David Koresh was a decent human being by any measure, but people have a right to live freely, whether I agree with what they were doing or not. The FBI used tactics that were unnecessary, being that no one had shown any violence toward them or anyone else from inside the compound. There were innocent children in the compound, along with countless other people. And instead of just waiting for Koresh to come out and go to town or elsewhere, they chose to try and enter the compound and open fire. Most people know the fiery hell that ensued on that fateful day in Waco, Texas. The majority of the children and people inside the compound died that day. Next, we have the Oregon ranchers. The dispute was over cattle grazing rights with the federal government. These 4 to 5 men occupied an abandoned wildlife preserve. And if you listen to the media, you would have thought that they had taken hostages and were terrorists. It turns out there's video footage of the entire ordeal, which was made into a documentary, and it's really good. You guys should look it up. I forget exactly what it's called. Lavoy Finicum was shot and killed when federal agents opened fire on his truck with a 17-year-old girl and another woman in the back seat, recording everything from the inside. Finicum was on his way to meet with the sheriff and continued to tell federal officers this. Once they opened fire on the vehicle, he got out, raised his hands while he stood in the snow. It was being recorded from inside the truck and above from a helicopter. Once they, you can see his hands drop down for a second, and they opened fire on him. The men remaining, they murdered him. The men remaining at the wildlife preserve were arrested after surrendering to federal law enforcement. They each received lengthy federal prison sentences. These were ranchers. These were not criminals. These were just simple salt-of-the-earth ranchers who were standing their ground over what they believed was right. peacefully. Um, President Trump pardoned these men as one of his first acts to right injustices when he came into office. I did not see the destruction of American cities when these men were murdered by law enforcement. I did not see the constant media coverage day after day. I did not see the demonizing of all law enforcement and the ridiculous calls to dismantle the police completely. Were these men's lives less important than black men who have been killed by the police, many of which were justified? As a child, I could have never imagined I would be witnessing what I consider to be a slow, communist-style takeover of my country and the hate that has been normalized against conservatives and white people. Not only normalized, but celebrated. The total destruction of a formerly prosperous and great nation does not happen overnight. Tyranny does not come with an evil face. It comes little by little over time. It creeps into every crevice of society. Sometimes it comes in the guise of education for your children. Other times it appears to be social justice. The end result has been the same consistently. In the end, the country collapses and the government turns against its own people. We see this same anomaly in Venezuela and South Africa today. Over time, the good people that still exist in positions of power are pushed out and replaced with people who seek power for a variety of reasons, mainly for personal gain and greed. We see politicians begin to become super wealthy seemingly overnight. There is an attack on traditional moral values, Christianity, and civil society as we know it in America and all over the world today. This in turn causes a breakdown of family units, children being indoctrinated into socialist ideals, universities spoon-feeding this propaganda, and even in some grade schools. Eventually, the people become sheep and are led to slaughter by the very government that was meant to protect them. I'm witnessing this slow progression and takeover of my beloved state of Texas and my country, the United States of America. The only way to stop this madness and turn things around for the next generation is for patriots to stop being polite and start punching back. I've begun to see this happen, and it's exactly what these people do not want. The mothers who do not want to see their children indoctrinated and brainwashed need to stand up and take an active role in the education of their children. Stop being too busy or caught up in materialistic things and shape your own children's minds. If you do not, you can bet that the liberal left will be happy to do it for you. We as women hold the key to the future. We are the givers of life, the glue that holds families together, and the teachers of our children. There is hope for the next generation in us. We must see the future through their eyes. If we fail to take back our birthright and the country our forefathers envisioned for all of us, this garbage can we see today, all of the hate we have allowed to flourish for whites and conservatives, this is what we leave for our children to face. Stand up while you still can. Use your drink to fight for the freedom most take for granted. I say, give me liberty or give me death. And that's it, guys. So I wanted to just read that because, many people that follow me know that being a Texan is very important to me. We have a very special history that relates to the Boer in a lot of ways. And, being an American, we are the last watchdogs in the world. The patriots of America, I feel, are some of the last people who really care about people and who have power in numbers to change lives, to change the world. And I believe we have a responsibility to use that power, numbers for good, not to ignore everything around us because we're too caught up in what kind of car we drive or what kind of shoes we wear or what kind of purse we carry. None of those things are important. And I've said this many times, but I'm going to say it again. I doubt that when our judgment day comes, those will be the measure that we're judged by. I believe that we will be judged by the measure of a man and the measure of a woman, and what we did and did not do when presented with difficult situations like South Africa and, things that are happening in the U.S. today. What did we do? Did we at least try? Or did we just blow it off and say, oh, well, it's not me. I don't really have time for an actual genocide taking place before my eyes. Because one day that's going to be us in America. People may laugh at that. They may call it a conspiracy theory. But you also called what's happening today a conspiracy theory. And you also laughed at that when people warned you. But now it's on your doorstep. And with all of that said, I will respond to you guys. Thank you, Ike. Hi. I'm sorry I can't see very well, but you're in Des Moines, so nice to see you here. Hey, Lance from Ohio. Hi, Ranger and Jakes from South Africa. Sarah Weaver does a lot of speaking at churches, and she would probably podcast with you. Great lady. Yes, that's his daughter, if I'm not mistaken. I would actually love to. I'll have to see if there's a way I can get in touch with her. This story has always been one that, man, it doesn't matter how many times I see it, it just devastates me, It is very devastating. And it's always been something that touches my heart and that's made me very angry. I would love to do that. Don't mess with Texas. You still cannot hear me. Hey, from Minnesota. Nice to see you here. I'm so happy to see Americans in the chat because I'm going to, I've had a lot of my fellow YouTubers and Americans reach out to me and tell me that, I need to use my voice for America too. And this is my country. I do. Sometimes I'm just so caught up in the horror that is South Africa that I know more about what's happening in South Africa than my own country. That's kind of sad, but I'm going to start integrating, speaking more on what is happening in America because it relates to everything that's happening in South Africa. So I'm really going to start speaking out forcefully, guys, because there are not enough people speaking as it is. There's definitely not enough women speaking, and we need women to speak the truth, and we need other women to listen, because as I said, we are raising the next generation. Do we want to raise them to be the generation that we see failed today, the generation after 9/11, or do we want them to be better? I personally want mine to be better. Yes, I did write that. Thank you. You can find it on my website, ANC Sanctioned Genocide, on the blog page. It's the first post because I just posted it. Aw, I love you guys too. Thank you. Amen to you too. Anyways, guys, so keep an eye out. As I said, I'm going to start doing some more things like this. I'm going to start writing more. Um, and I'm going to add America into my channel more. I have to do this. My country is crumbling so fast that it's very devastating. Thank you. You bookmarked my website. Thank you so much for sharing. They must not mess with cowboys or boars. You're right. There are a lot alike. Um, One thing I would like to say before I go, guys, because I hear my kids and I don't want my son out here cussing again. Um, it's all for show, by the way. Uh, One thing I wanted to say is that now I don't even know because I don't have it written down. Oh, my website. Thank you so much for sharing and trying to get this information out. You know, I'm under attack constantly with attempts to deplatform me and silence me. And the reason that I created this website was no one can take the information down. No one can ban me for 10 days or forever. And on social media, they won't let us post the truth. And although I know some of it is very hard to look at, these are human beings. They had families, they had lives, and they need to be seen as human beings. So sometimes, even though it's horrifying to look at, in order to bring change, people must look at it. And that's why I created it. So the more people it reaches, the more people are outraged, because this truly has been being hidden from us for almost 30 years. Hi to Tampa. I used to live close to Tampa. Thank you. I'm glad you found me too. I know Tampa is hot and the mosquitoes are terrible, just as bad as Texas. But I don't know the political climate right now. I know the question wasn't for me, but anyways, guys, I hear my kids, and I will speak to you guys again soon. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm hoping to gain more American followers. This will also help South Africa. Um, and just get the message out. As a woman, I think it's important for people to hear more conservative voices speaking the truth, you know? So I'm going to try my best, guys. And I love each and every one of you guys. I am thinking of you in South Africa. I am praying for your safety, and I will speak to you again soon.